Turn to Acts chapter 4. Thank you for the worship. And wow, I love Jesus. We are looking at verse 23 and specifically verse 24 today. But I want to continue by giving you and constantly keeping you focused on the overall concept of the passage, which goes all the way down and includes verse 31. So we're going to begin reading at verse 23, and you know the context of the scene itself. And being let go, they went to their own companions and reported all that the chief priest and elders had said to them. So when they heard that, they raised their voice to God with one accord and said, Lord, you are God. You have made heaven and earth and the sea and all that are in them, who by the mouth of your servant David have said, why did the nations rage and the people plot vain things? And the kings of the earth took their stand, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ. For truly against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate with the Gentiles and the people of Israel were gathered together to do whatever your hand and your purpose determined before to be done. If I really wanted to find out what you really believe, not what you say you believe, but what you really believe, what's really grips you deep inside, what you're willing to die for, what you're absolutely so convinced about that it is unmovable in your life. If I wanted to find you, if I wanted to discover in you what you really believe, how would I do that? If I wanted to slice you down the middle, open you up at the core of your system, whatever you want to call that, the core that makes you who you are, the heart issue, the soul, the spirit, whatever, however you want to define that, whatever that is in you, if I wanted to go there and find out what you really, really, really believe, how would I get it done? Most any place I go in town, whack a guy on the back, say, do you believe in Jesus? Oh, yes. What do you want to do with that? See, we all believe in Jesus. We say that. But how deep does that go? See, again, if I wanted to slit you down the middle and go to the core of your being and find out how could I get there? I would propose to you that the way to get there is in the moment of great stress, overwhelming pressure, persecution, which is our passage. I would propose to you that what comes out of you in natural response from the situations that you are in, that pressure you, squeeze you, bring you in, that is what is really at the core of your life. C.S. Lewis said, want to see the rats? Turn the basement light on, stomp down the stairs. Whoa, no rats here. He says, no. Tiptoe down the basement stairs. Flip the lights on. They're everywhere. It's in the spontaneous moments, in the I didn't think it through. It's in the moments when I didn't have time to think of the response. It's in the moment when, hey, it just happened. I just said it. It just spilled out. It's in that moment. In that moment, I'm revealed in here. Now, here's the scene. Miracles been done. There's been lots of miracles, but this miracle, wow, set the thing off. It was just getting overloaded, too many Christians, too much influence in Jerusalem, too much talking about Jesus, too many people thrilled about Christ, too much is going on. Sanhedrin really has decided to shut it down. They've moved in. They've interrogated the two apostles. They've threatened to do the inch of their life. They'd like to do more, but they can't do it because the pressure of the crowd. But certainly the threat is there, and this is the beginning of the persecution hour for the church. This is all starting. The two apostles come back to the early church. They gather everybody together. They unload on them. They don't hold back. They don't camouflage it. They don't cover it. They don't sweeten it. They give all the reality of the truth that they just went through. The threats that they just went through are now being dumped on the early church. And the early church is feeling the pressure of this whole thing. And the early church comes into this pressurized moment, this squeeze, this persecution hour, and begins to give a spontaneous, they hadn't have a committee meeting. How are we going to react to this? Let's pray about it for a day. They didn't come back and have a response. This is a spontaneous, automatic, it's coming out of me, can't help it, it's who I am, it's just a, and you're getting their response. I propose to you, their response is given to you in verse 24, and it is phenomenal. And this is what we've been walking through. And when they heard that, they raised their voice to God with one accord and said, Lord, you are God and made heaven and earth and the sea and all that are in them. We discovered that the subject of the sentence is they. So we're definitely talking about the early church and their automatic response to the hour of persecution. There are three things that happen, three verbs in the passage. Two main verbs, raised and said. But there is this third verb, which is a participle, which defines what is going on in their life, which is heard. So you got heard, raised, and said. But the key to the whole passage is this idea of homothodon, which is the idea of one accord. It is the same and together with passion. So it's the idea of this spontaneous inside drawing together and all having the same opinion, seeing the same thing, responding the same way. They are heavily, passionate about this. Again, this is not, oh, you suddenly like the color I like. It isn't that. It's all of a sudden we agree on the subject of the color of the carpet. It isn't that. It doesn't have anything to do with that. What it has to do with is something has happened in their lives that has drawn them so tightly together that they are all responding in the same way, overshadowing all the differences that are in their lives, and suddenly the differences just don't make any difference anymore, and they all are united together. Now, the word one accord, the verb, or the adverb, literally identifies heard, raised, and said. So we're proposing to you, they had oneness in akouo, which is the Greek word for heard. They have oneness in admiration, which is the worship thing. They're all worshiping in the same way. You mean they all raised their hand? No. They all raised both hands? No. They all stood, but no. They all sang at the top of their lungs? No. They all had their personalities, but what is coming out of them in admiration and worship is all united. They are focused on the same object of worship. And then the third, which is said, is oneness in articulation, which is what we're going to talk about today. I want to propose to you that the oneness, again, did not come out of the removal of all the differences. We were arguing about the carpet. We tore up the carpet and went to cement floor. Now we have no more arguments. This is not the absence of strife and disagreement. That's not what's going on here. They still had disagreements. They still had strife in that sense of disagreeing. Hey, I still don't like your hairdo. I don't care what you do with it. So hey, that hasn't changed, or the lack of a hairdo at all. But that hasn't changed. See, that doesn't change. We're not dealing with that. What we're dealing with is something has so possessed them that they have become one from the inside core of their life all the way through. And of course, you know what that is. That's the nature of Jesus. Have I been clear on that? The nature of Jesus is not like Mother Nature. The nature of Jesus, when I refer to the nature of Jesus, I'm referring to the very essence of the personhood of who he is. I'm referring to the mind, the will, and the emotion which makes up the personality of the one called Jesus. I'm referring not to doctrine. I'm referring not to theology. I'm referring not to a thought process, not to concept. I'm referring to a living, functioning, moving individual by the name of Jesus. And you know what has happened? The spirit of that Jesus, the nature of that Jesus, the essence of that Jesus has literally moved through the pores of the skin of these individuals and has gone to the very core of their system, and they have had some kind of merger with that person. They haven't just reformed. They haven't taken on a new lifestyle. They haven't decided, well, I'll quit that and start this. They haven't just started to come in church. They haven't just, well, I'll read my Bible. They haven't, well, I was baptized. They haven't gone through ceremonial acts. That isn't the issue. The issue is at the core of their life has been merged, has been permeated, has been invaded by another person, and within them there are two people who have come together in some kind of merger. And in that merger, they have begun to think like he thinks. In other words, Jesus has invaded their flesh, and in invading their flesh and coming at the core of their being, they are so wrapped up in him that they are thinking like he thinks, they are feeling like he feels, they have the emotions that he has, they begin to look at things the way he looks at them, and there is this strange alteration of the whole existence of their life as they take on the characteristics of the Spirit of God moving through them. And you could legitimately say that as you looked at Jesus and saw the visible image of the invisible Father, so you could now look at these guys and see the visible image of the invisible Father. Because the same expression that was coming through Jesus is now coming through them. In fact, that's what impressed the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was blown away at the testimony of these boys, saying, whoa, they've been with Jesus, which was another way of saying in their language that, wow, something is going on so strong in these boys that we're seeing the same thing out of them that we saw out of Jesus. And everything that irritated us about Jesus is now irritating us about these guys. We thought we got rid of him. He is back, only there's two of him. Wouldn't you like to have been on the streets of Pentecost? See, the devil plots, plans, manipulates, goes through all of this, and finally gets Jesus crucified, wipes his hand. Hey, one Jesus dead, gone. That's the end of that. And then all of a sudden, the spirit of that Jesus is descended upon the disciples, and 120 Jesuses hit the streets. Wouldn't you just like to see his face? Whoa, it's getting out of hand. Shut that guy up. Oh, no, 3,000 just got Jesus. And now we got 3,120 Jesuses running. Oh, good night. And by the time you get here, we can't tolerate this anymore. So the one accordness, the oneness that they were experiencing is not in, oh, we all begin to like the same thing. We all want the same stuff on our pizza. It's not that. It's this core issue of this merger with this person, and they all begin to think like he thinks, feel like he feels, express, want, attitude, all like he had. That was the oneness. Now here's the concept of the passage. That was so strong that this believer experienced it. Whoa, and I've merged with Jesus. You experienced it also? Wow! Which means if I'm in oneness merged with him and you're in oneness merged with him, guess what? You and I are in oneness. Even if I don't like your hairdo. Whoa! Did you get that? That's where the oneness was. In other words, they had so merged with the essence of Jesus at the core of their life, they had so merged with this person that Jesus, this person, the nature, person, spirit, however you want to phrase that, has literally moved to the pores of their skin, gotten inside of them, and they have literally merged with him until they begin to feel like he feels, want what he wants, think like he thinks, and because that happened in me, that happened in someone else, that happened in someone else, that those who that happened in begin to come together in this oneness. In fact, this was so strong, here's the point, this was so strong that they looked at what happened to Jesus what was going on in their life, what happened in Jesus, they saw what was going on in their life as an extension of what he experienced. Well, what did he experience? And they saw this persecution as not, oh my, they saw it as, whoa, we get to join in the dying, the suffering, that if they hated him, they're going to hate us. If they didn't like him, how could they possibly like us? If they were against him, they're going to be against us. If the world won't tolerate them, how is the world going to tolerate us? See, that becomes the whole. That's the concept of the passage. Which is awful. Because you see, my approach to Christianity is, Jesus died for me and I get off scot-free. Woo! But they saw this merger as an extension of his crucifixion. And therefore, if he suffered, they were going to suffer, and they expected it to happen, and this was no shock to them, and they embraced it. And their approach to this was, come on people, let's put on our big boy pants and let's get at this. And there was no place in the passage where they say, oh God, let all the Sanhedrin die of cancer. There was none of that. There was not, oh God, you got to deliver us out of the mouth of these lions. There was none of that. There was, oh God, let us speak with boldness in the midst of this pressure and let what happened to Jesus come through into our lives so forcibly that it continues to redeem as Jesus did. Now, as you go to verse 24, you immediately begin to be affected by the idea that there are some elements to this oneness and extension idea that they seemingly feel and sense as the crucifixion of Jesus, and they become an extension of that. And one of them is in the creative speaking, because they begin to voice this. So there was a creative speaking. If you look again at verse 24, you'll see it says this. And when they heard that, they raised their voice to God with one accord and said, Lord, you are God. You made heaven and earth and the sea and all that are in them. Now, obviously the subject is Lord. It's a vocative, which is an emphatic, it's an exclamation. It's a Lord, it's a yelling, it's an addressing kind of thing. And there'll be a whole study on that, but that is a phenomenal statement right there. They backed it up in my passage, which is an interpretation, no doubt, rather than a translation. They're saying, Lord, you are God. So it's the elevation, it's the putting him in the position that he's really in, which becomes the subject of the statement. And who is this God of ours? He is the sovereign, absolute, down to it, creator of all things. And they state it like this, who made. Now, the word made is the Greek word poieo, which we just go crazy over around here. We're always talking about it. It's the Greek word poieo, which is often in the scriptures translated do. And there are two words for do, poieo and proso. Proso is duty, got to, come to church, we've expressed it in terms of painting. Poieo is artistic painting. It's the flow of creative juices from within that you just, whoa, and you create this masterpiece and don't know how you do it because you have artistic ability. Praso is barn painting, which I'm capable of doing. But this whole artistic thing is a flow from within. Anybody can barn paint. See, anybody can come to church. Anybody can sit on a board. Anybody can give money. Anybody can be baptized. Anybody can read the Bible. But Christianity is not on that basis. Christianity is the essence of the nature of God indwelling the individual until from the deep inside of you there begins to flow this artistic expression of who God is. So Christianity, folks, is never on a doing level. It's always on a flowing, whoa, what is happening in my, can you believe this? Christianity is about living like you can't live, being what you can't be, acting like you can't act, thinking what you can't think, and looking at yourself saying, good night, how am I doing this? And all the time you know it isn't you because there's this artistic nature thing going on within you that begins to express itself through you because you have merged with the nature of God. And could I boldly say, if you don't have that, you're not Christian? Because that's the essence of Christianity, that merger of the nature. So in the merger of the nature, these people have become one with him, and through them, he is literally creating this whole flow of their life and existence. And they give expression to that in, you are God. You made heaven, you made earth, you made the sea, you made all that are in them. And we are in the flow of that creative nature of God that literally brings about everything that is. So the nature of God is literally creatively moving through them in this hour. Ephesians 1:3, we went through this with the students, but this it's such a phenomenal verse because it literally says God is sitting on his throne and he's got all of this stuff inside of him, this nature inside of him that just emanates out of him and produces this fog, this aroma, it's his body odor. It just creates this whoa all around him. And to get close to him, you have to get in this, which is produced out of his nature. He can't help himself. He doesn't strain to do it. He's not a reflection of the light. He is the producer of the light itself. And this light is all around him, and he lives in this awareness. And then in the same verse, he goes on to say, God who sits on his throne with this nature that spills out and through him says, oh, I can't, this is my nature. And his nature just drives him to do what? To produce. So he begins to speak you into sonship, you into power, you into greatness. Why? Because it's flowing out of his being. He can't help himself. It's just the way he is. It's spontaneous. And it's his nature, and it just flows out of him, and he just speaks all this stuff into existence. And you are a part of, and in the middle of, and all of that is for, and you are to experience all of that as that nature permeates you. And you live in the creative flow of the nature of God in your life. The early church was captured by that nature. And in being captured by that nature, ladies and gentlemen, oh, I'm experiencing that in my life. Oh, and he is literally producing this life of his through me. And I'm living in the flow of that nature, which has captured me at my heart. Oh, you're doing the same thing. Well, I'm in oneness with him. Oh, you're in oneness with him. Then we're in oneness with each other. And the oneness they experienced as they begin to give expression was God is creatively flowing through us, building this with an overwhelming plan. And making us alive, and live. They were captured by that. So the early church said, since that is taking place, as you move into their response, they immediately began to say, hey, since the nature of God that was in Jesus, flowing through Jesus, producing all of this, is now in us, flowing through us, producing all of this, and since we are one with him and what he is living through us, then the suffering and the crucifixion that he was in, we are going to participate in. That's the concept. Now, with that as a reality, let's move to not only the creative speaking, but the conceptual speaking, or contractual speaking, which is given to us again in which moves us into verse 25. So when they heard that, they raised their voice to God with one accord and said, Lord, you are God. You made heaven and earth and the sea and all that are in them. So the creative nature of God that brings everything into existence is literally at the core of our system, is flowing through our life, producing all of this through us. So we're in the middle of this. We're not backing off. We're not going to keep silent. We've been threatened not to say the name of Jesus. We are in great boldness going to get at it. We're going to fight with everything we've got. We're going to go for it. And then they immediately began to say, who, verse 25, by the mouth of your servant David have said, and they quoted the scriptures. That is so consistent. Every time you go any place in the scriptures, you are brought back to the scriptures themselves. The scriptures brings you back to the scriptures, verifying itself, which is just phenomenal. In other words, everything that, and they're quoting Psalms 2, by the way, and if the question that they're raising in Psalms 2, why did the nations rage? And the people plot vain things. The kings of the earth took their stand, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ. So do you see how they thought about this? Now get the point. They've been filled with the very nature of God. They're in union, in oneness with him. They've been merged with him. Out of them is flowing this tremendous dynamic Spirit of God, same Spirit that was in Jesus, reproducing the same attitude, the same style, the same life, the same flow, the same redemptive heart is flowing out of them like it flowed out of Jesus. And they identify that in the scriptures as crucifixion. In other words, we're not going to give up. The pressure is on. The persecution has come. How are we going to respond to this? We're going to come back with both fists, friend. We're going to put on our big boy pants and we're going to stomp into our world and say, stand back, boys, here we come. We're not backing off. We're not going to keep silent. We're not going to compromise. We're not going to lessen our emphasis. We're going to stay right where we are. We're going to fight with everything we've got. Oh, good. I'm for a good fight. Then they come to, how are we going to fight? Same way Jesus did. Well, how could we not, people? Because he was filled with the same Spirit of God. He merged with the same Spirit of God. The oneness that we have with God, he had. What was going on in him is going on in us. So we think exactly like he thought. So how did he fight? Now that's a little repulsive to me. Because see, if I had the power of God to reach out and grab a hold of a guy who's been lame all of his life and yank him to his feet, and the guy is made totally well, if I had that kind of power, I wouldn't have any problem at all using that same power to reverse what I just did. So you cross me, and you're the crippled guy now. See, that's what I call fighting. See, I go into a world with my fists doubled up. I go into a world, we're not backing up on this. We're gonna. See, I identify with that. But their approach is, what was going on in Jesus is now going on in us, and we've got this oneness with him and merger, so we think like he thinks. Oh, you do too? So we're in oneness with you. So together, you know how we're going to fight? Exactly like he fought. How did he fight? Bleed, suffer, and die. Turn the other cheek. Go the second mile. Come on, where's the good passages? Stomp in their face. And they identified suffering as an extension of what went on in Jesus, and what was going on in their life was an extension of that with the same fighting that he did. And if you think I'm making this up, you can begin to walk through the book of Acts. In fact, you can just go another chapter or so, and you know what you run into? The first martyr. His name was Stephen. What a great guy. His name was Stephen, and he preached this phenomenal sermon, and at the close of the sermon, they were so mad at him that they stoned him to death. Why didn't he pick up the stones and throw them back? But he did not. In fact, it says, Acts 7:60, then he knelt down and cried out with a loud voice, Lord, do not charge them with this sin. Who does that sound like? Father, forgive. They call that fighting. If I really wanted to know what you believe, not, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus. Everybody believes in Jesus. Well, but if I wanted to know what really has gripped you, what you're willing to die for, what you believe so, you are, what's at the core? How would I find out? I would look at how you fight. Because fighting comes out of persecution, pressure, crisis. Now don't say, oh, you're right, Manley, I should be more loving. My family relationships, oh, yeah. Okay, I'll forgive them. but I won't forget. Jesus, we got a war on our hands, don't we, God? And when we got into Christianity, when we gave our lives to you, we didn't get out of anything. We got in the middle of everything. And what I had hoped to be, lean back, lazy chair, watch TV, drink lemonade, and wait to go to heaven, ended up to be Philippi jails, bleeding backs, people breathing down my throat, crisis hours, circumstances beyond my control, selling all I've got and giving to the poor. Brother, this isn't what I signed up for. And yet, why should I be surprised that that's exactly what I got myself into when I knew that what I was getting into was you coming to live within me and how you are and the kind of love I wanted for you? What did I think you were going to do? Fill me with a different kind of love for other people? That if you came and filled me with the same kind of love that you love me, would you not through me love just like you love me? Would you not love others just like you love me? And God, you didn't pick up stones and throw them back at me when I threw them at you. And if you filled me, would you pick up stones in me and throw them? Wow. Why didn't I have sense enough to see that? And it wasn't that you were wimpy. It wasn't that you were weak. It wasn't that you weren't capable. You, the sovereign, almighty, creative God, how did you respond to all the chaos and all the fist shaking in your face that we've given you? You poured your life out for us. You fought until you won us. That's how you did. And if you would come and live within me, what would you do through me? If I had your mind, if I had your heart, if I thought like you thought, felt like you felt, merged with you. God, could it be that what's going on in my life this very moment, in the pressure, in the circumstances, in the relational stuff that's taking place, in the conflicts that are going on in my life, could it be, God, that all of this is an extension of your crucifixion? And that I am distinctly, directly tied to your death? And that here in this hour, 2017, I am experiencing the dying of the Lord Jesus in my life. And you're wanting to reproduce that death through me in a redemptive flow into my relationships crisis world. I see it, God. You're taking a knife and slitting me down the middle, man. You're going to the core of my existence. Whether I'm really in this or whether I'm not. And I've got plenty of room this morning to get on my face and repent for all the belly aching, complaining. I prayed for the Sanhedrin to all get cancer and die. I wanted your magic wand to take away all the pressure. Forgive me, God. Make me a warrior. In this community. Who fights in the style of the cross. Heads are bowed. This probably wasn't for you at all. This was probably just all for me. But wouldn't it be something if the Jesus in me and the Jesus in you could produce a oneness that would begin to give expression to the overwhelming force of redemption spilling from a cross that would make the devil of this community tremble, would push back the forces of evil, would literally reach out and grab a hold of people and draw them in to such an atmosphere of power, weaponry, resource, that redemption would take place in their lives and radical change would be known. Come on, folks, it's time to get in the battle. We've been distracted with our own desires. We've been filled with our own plans. We've given tokens towards Him. He's calling us to merge with His nature until the way He thinks is the way we think. The way He approaches things is the way we approach. The way He fights is the way we fight. The way He conquers is the way we conquer. What do you really believe? Moments of seeking. Want to join me?